afternoon, Varsity Locker Room fans. This is your host, Frank Kill, and Matt Taylor, back for our second season. We are going to dive right into the Midwest Athletic Conference, also known as MACtion. And boy, what a season they had last year, from top to bottom. You know, you always got to look at the MAC and start with Delphos St. John's. They went 9-0 last year. You know, Coach Elwer takes them to a regional game, and it was one of those games, I think, if you know, as you were a spectator, into the third quarter, probably would have thought, man, they're going to run away with it. And then all of a sudden, the tide switches, and Arlington goes on a run and finishes the third quarter to get the game tied. And then, you know, if you're Coach Elwer, you're probably thinking, man, what could I have done different? And as coaches, we're always going to look back and go, what if? I mean, I'm sure there was a couple games that you coached, I coached, and go, why didn't I see this? Or why didn't my assistant see it? You know, and it's going to happen. And that's the way it is, because everybody had picked Delphos St. John's to get to a state semifinal game. And, you know, if you look at MAC, you know, you had Delphos St. John's finish 9-0, Marion Local finished 8-1 in the conference, Versailles and Coldwater and Minster at 6-3, and then St. Henry at 4-5. You know, really good teams right there. Every Friday night, I think we're all glued into, you know, whatever app we're looking at to check out, can Delphos go on a roll again and not lose, because they haven't lost a conference game, what, 2 years?
2 years. They've gone 9-0 the last 2 years, and the MAC is so competitive. And I know Coach Elwer would say, and he'd be the first to tell you, it's not easy going 18-0. We may not even be talking back to back to back if Cam doesn't hit that shot 2 years ago against Coldwater over at the Palace. These games, there's very little room for error. But then, you know, you've got a team that finishes second in the MAC, but goes into Division VI in Marion Local and gets to the state championship game. And so, you know, it's just year in, year out. I think that St. Henry, we kind of expected with Coach Rosenbeck and what they had coming back. They just didn't have much offense production. So I think that will put them towards the top again. Versailles is always the wild card because we just don't know much about them playing down so far south, and they go further south, and I think they're Division V. So they, you know, we don't know much about them, but they're always in the top of the mix. But yeah, just talking about Delphos St. John's and what they did last year, Coach Elwer, thought he did a fantastic job, because his big thing is trying to shut the noise down because the expectations were so high. And when you're returning what he's returning, those expectations aren't going to change. I know what he expects from himself and from that program, but it's one thing to expect it as a program. It's another thing for these high school kids to hear it from everybody's mouth that, you know, you're playing Russia in that state semifinal game. You're playing Russia. Well, you got to get there first, and you got to give, you know, we got to talk about the BVC. We've left the BVC out here. We'll talk about the BVC. You got to give Coach Vermillion a lot of credit, and what he's did with Arlington last year. His son, the point guard, was just fantastic. And for them, they could have folded. In Delphos St. John's, you know, you said at the end of the third quarter, Delphos, everyone felt like was just going to run away with it, because that's what they've done all year. And going 23-3, that doesn't happen by accident. They just put their foot on the accelerator in the fourth quarter. But I felt like Coach Vermillion did a great job, and Calvin Willow inside at 6'11", really took some things away. And then that 2-3 zone gave Delphos St. John's a lot of trouble. I felt like at times Delphos settled for a 3, but you're not going to change the way you've played all year. And Coach Elwer really stuck to his guns and how they were playing. And it's not like they played a horrible game. I just felt like Arlington played a better game.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, when you have 6'11" inside, it's a game changer. You know, especially from the offensive rebounding standpoint, Delphos was always one to crash the boards. But when you have 6'11" down there, it's really hard to go get a rebound at someone that's darn near a foot taller than you.
Yeah, and how about last year? They got their 1,600th victory when they won the district championship. I think we could probably find 3 teams in this area, and we added up all their wins in school history, and they're not to 1,600. So that just shows the tradition that Delphos St. John's has had. And they have not had many coaches since Coach Arnzen, you know, and that consistency always helps you. And Coach Elwer always does a fantastic job. But just looking at his team, it all obviously centers around Cam. Cam, man, we talked about it last year when we interviewed him. The guy has great personality, a smart kid going to Furman to play basketball, which I think is an excellent choice for him. I think he's probably going to see minutes right away, and then get a good education, a very smart kid. And then they got his brother Andrew, who's just a tremendous player as well. And then they just got a host of players back, if you want to talk about.
Well, you got Jackson Weaker, Easton Elwer, and Tice McLean, guys that played a lot of minutes for him last year. You think about their opportunities. I look like promising newcomers: Braden Klaus, Maddox.
But he's really not a newcomer, Braden Klaus, because he had some big games last year, especially with Tice being out for a while with an injury. I thought Braden Klaus stepped up with a lot of big minutes in some games. One in particular game I remember that I felt like he played really well was the Marion local game. And that was a home game there where they defeated the Flyers. But even his newcomers have some varsity experience.
Maddox Krager, Grady Martz, Austin Arnold, Evan Martz, Ian Fairchild, and Aiden Swick. I talked to Aiden's dad the other day and just talked about the way that they're playing as a chemist. The chemistry is great. And Coach Aaron Auer is getting these guys, their off-season workouts are phenomenal. But I know their scrimmages are totally different than what they've been in the past. And knowing Aaron, he's trying to take this program, not this team, but this program to a higher level of competitiveness. Yes, they did a great job last year winning the MAC. That's an ultimate goal again, but Aaron wants to take them to a new level. And I think they have the talent. They have all the keys. But, there's that one night that they can be cold. Who else is going to step up? And we know Aaron has got these guys playing between Cam and Andrew. They're going to be able to shoot the ball. But I look back at that game against Arlington. Bowling Green's not an easy facility to shoot in. It's wide open. The depth perception between the rim and basket is completely, it throws you off. And I know that Aaron's going to, continue to focus on, doing what they do and believing in it. And that's what a good coach does. Guys, it's a long season. I mentioned it earlier on in one of our podcasts that, it's a 4-month season and you got to withstand the grind.
Well, Delphus St. John's, if you look at them, I kind of compare them to our 2017 Perry team where we got to a regional. None of our guys had been to a regional, and they had that experience. So there was nerves that first year. And that second year, there wasn't those nerves. We just played loose. We had those seniors that had been there. They had done it as juniors. But there were some trying times along the way. In the district final game against Fort Recovery, I was already preparing a speech to our guys because we're down 10 going to the fourth quarter. And I was just feeling so bad for our players, but they showed that resiliency. So it's not going to be easy. And again, everybody on paper has Delphus St. John's getting this far. And the good thing is they have great leadership, and that's where it all starts. So Coach Aaron Elwer will make sure his team is prepared for everything. And I think, again, that experience of playing in that regional last year, and again, if you look at Division 7 in this area, I just don't see any team that's up to that level. Now, Arlington, I felt like kind of came out of the darkness last year. And so there might be some teams out there, and obviously there will be some teams that will challenge them along the way. But looking at it, again, we had those high expectations last year. Again, I think they have those same expectations. Definitely I'm putting on them to get to a Final Four this year.
Well, you have your senior leader, Cam Heller. I mean, he is, Mr. Superman, and he's a guy that, has been playing since he was a freshman. He's experienced a lot. Having a guy like Cam on your team, even though he's the coach's son, he brings so much leadership, so much experience and knowledge on the court that you just can't, replicate. It's one of those where the 4 years of experience has really helped Cam get where he's at now. And you're right. I think Final Four is definitely in sight for the Blue Jays.
If you look at the standings, Marion Local finished at second. And again, a guy that just does it year in, year out and has learned to adapt to his schedule, knowing that he's not going to get his guys till second week of December. Now, this could change, and I want a prediction right now for actually this will come out after, so they'll be knowing this. We're recording this the Sunday before the regional finals, St. Henry versus Marion Local. Is a 21-14 game. The first time they played Marion Local won. Do you have Marion Local winning again? You don't have to give a score, but do you have Marion Local winning?
Yes. I can't go against Coach Goodwin.
All right. Well, I'm going against Coach Goodwin here, not because it's personal. I'm going against him because I think St. Henry, I said if Marion Local goes 10-0 because they had a tough game against Versailles, they had a tough game against Anna. We're talking football here. Sorry, guys. And those were really, really tough games. I thought maybe if they lose one under their belt, that they win the state championship. But my prediction was they wouldn't win a state championship if they ran the table. Now, what they've won, 78 in a row?
78, yeah.
I don't know. But anyways, I have the Redskins knocking off the Flyers.
You heard it here first.
Regional
this
final.
is pre-recorded.
All right, but looking at Coach Guttmiller and what he's done, he's just done a fantastic job. Gets his team to a state championship game last year. When Monroe Central walked out, I'm doing the game on the radio. I was like, Marion Local is going to win by 50. But that's one thing that you can say, don't judge the book by its cover, because that team could play. And they really, really defended Marion Local because they didn't have the height that I thought that they could compete when you lose. Like an Austin Niekamp that was 6'8", that's playing at Malone this year. I was like, there's no way that they're going to be able to guard him. And Marion Local just came out on the short side by 8 points. But looking at them, they had a 26-3 record. They lost the state championship game. They lose to Delphus St. John's, and they lose to Russia. Those are their 3 losses last year. And remember, he's not starting really fully until the beginning of January because he's getting his kids after probably about the second week of December. So he's always done a great job with them. And what he's really going to rely on this year is his point guard from last year. That was the point guard for him for their state runner-up team, and that's Braden Mesher. He did a fantastic job last year, averaging 12 points a game. He's the all-time leading three-point shooter in Marion Local history. He's a 3-year starter. But the guy I really liked, and I felt like he was a guy that never showed up in the box score was Cale Arns. He could defend the best player, and he would expend so much energy, but he would still go down and get a key offensive rebound or hit a key basket for them. So those are the 2 guys he's building around. He has the quarterback that will be playing for him this year, 6'5" Brennan Hess. And then he has Luke Everman. He's really going to be pushing for a starting spot. And Isaac Moeller and Oliver Hulsman. But again, a big key losses for them are Austin Niekamp, 1,000-point scorer, and Ryan Homan, who hit 9 threes in the tournament trail. So Coach Guttmiller does have his work cut out for him, but he always rises to the task.
Well, Marion Local was so fun to watch for so long because of a guy like Austin Niekamp. You know, he was a very versatile. Now that he's graduated, it'll be interesting to see what kind of image the Flyers have this year, because he was a guy that you just knew he was inside out, could stretch the floor. Do they have that guy? He talked about the sophomore, the 6'5" Hess kid. You know, can he come in and be as versatile as Niekamp was? And right now you got Braden Mesher, who can flat out shoot the ball. I mean, here's a kid that's got the all-time threes, and he's a senior and hasn't shot a 3 yet his senior year. So He broke a record as a junior, and that's very impressive. Let's look at St. Henry in Division 6. They lost in the sectional finals to New Bremen, 47-42. They're one of those teams that's led by a great coach, Coach Eric Rosenbeck. Rosie and I, we go way back from when we first started coaching against each other, and extremely competitive. And being at St. Henry, when you talked about football, it's football. Competitiveness breeds, it's contagious. And I think those coaches down there, they understand the value of having good athletes, played multiple sports. They went 10-13 last year, 4-5 in the MAC. They scored 48.5 points a game, but not shutting down their opponents and giving up 51. So I'm sure, Rosie's going to, kind of focus on defense. They're always a team that lives and dies by the 3. But nice thing is they're bringing back a few seniors. They got Jack Hulsman at 6'1", senior guard, averaged almost 10 points a game. Keith Keith Seffering, 6'2" senior guard, averaging 3 points a game. Charlie Whirling, 6'2" senior forward, averaged 5 points a game. Those are guys that are going to be senior led. Then you have a sophomore that's 6'5", Austin Zimmerman, averaged almost 8 points a game, almost 6 rebounds. Here's a kid that's in MAC country, so having that height is a huge advantage. And so, if you're Coach Rosenbeck for the the Redskins, they're going to be they're a very competitive league, and I think when it comes to in MAC, you've got to be able to show up on a Friday night knowing you're going to get your best, because the top 6 teams are going to be battling for that spot. And can someone knock off Delphos St. John's? Coach Rosenbeck, he knows that's one of his goals.
I think Coach Baggs brought it up well, superintendent, ex-coach at Van Wert, that a lot of these MAC games are decided where they play at too, because there's a lot of tough venues to play in. But Coach Rosie, he's going to reap the benefits of starting a very young squad last year. If you look at you said they live and die by the 3. You got 77 attempts, 68 attempts, 33 attempts, 61 attempts. They shoot a lot of threes. But what's really going to hurt them, and unfortunately for Carter LaGuire, their starting quarterback, he tore his ACL for the 2nd straight year in Week 4 against Delphos St. John's this year. He was really looking forward to getting him back at the point guard after missing him all last year. But again, that's why I don't like my guys playing football, but that's another subject. But, and St. Henry hasn't lost a step on the football field, even so it's next man up. And that's just the mentality of the entire school, the coach, everything. But I'm looking for St. Henry to be up there to really challenge Delphos St. John's. Again, I'm not sure where that game is, but I really like that, what do you want to say, analysis by Coach Baggs. Is a lot of these games are dependent on where they play.
Well, St. John's has to play at St. Henry January 23rd. So,
well, according to my records, St. Henry still has 3 more weeks of football. So,
a lot of things could change from here to now. So,
all right, let's turn our attention to the BVC. The BVC last year was won by Liberty Benton. They went 10-0. Unfortunately, they were knocked out in the district semifinal game by Genoa in overtime. I think you went to that game, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
To go do a pre-scout for Columbus Academy, who we got to see in the state championship game. They ran the table at 10-0. Arlington went 9-1, and as we all know, made the state Final Four last year. And Van Buren, under Coach Bunn, kind of a surprise there. They went 8-2. Coach Salter, like we said, went 7-3, but really challenged that Lima Central Catholic team and really had an opportunity to win that game in regulation and went to overtime. And then we all saw what LCC did, going all the way to a regional final. And then Lipsick, who's still playing in the football playoffs, they're going to be playing in a regional final. They went 5-5, and Pandora was 5-5 in the BVC. So those teams are probably going to be the teams that are probably close up to the top. I know that there's some teams stacked, but Liberty Benton is returning a host of players after I think now this is officially their last year in the BVC. Last year I was saying it was their last year. This is the last year, and it's probably time for that bigger school to move on for both parties, not for just the small schools, but for them to be playing schools more their size that will get them tournament ready. But let's look at Arlington. Fantastic season. Coach Vermillion, 24-4, 9-1 in the BVC. They get all the way to the state semis, and Russia is one of the best Division 7 teams or Division 4, however you want to say it, that I've seen in a long time. They dismantled them by 17. Russia just really gave them no chance. There's probably better at every position.
No, they were. And again, all the credit to Russia, but again, Coach Vermillion, being one of the best coaches in this area, he's always going to give you an opportunity because he's a competitor, but he's always well prepared. And he's got 4 guys returning, 4 seniors that are returning, which is a huge plus after losing last year's, to me, losing his son, obviously to Jace to graduation, and Brady Griggs, who scored 8 points a game. But having 4 seniors that can come back and lead, and then Calvin Willow, who's 6'10", 6'11", scoring almost 11 points a game, almost 8 rebounds. Here's a kid that is, I think he's a 2-time state champion high jumper. So he can flat out. He's
it's
just
in
a
the
great
pedigree.
athlete.
His sister plays volleyball at Penn State.
I think so. He's going to be the focal point, especially around this area, as a big guy who can dominate, especially inside. But getting guys like Aiden Cavany, 6'1" senior, 8.5 points a game. Trenton Heacock, 5'11", almost 5 points a game, and Drew Metzger, 5'11" senior, a little over 4 points. So there's a lot of returners, a lot of pieces from last year's team that had a great tournament run, losing to the state champions. A lot of things to build on there. So, if you're Coach Vermillion, you got to be really looking at the chops right now and going, we got a lot of key pieces back. But the pieces that we lost in terms of Jace Vermillion, who averaged 15.5 points a game, that's a scorer. You got to find a scorer who can be able to distribute, but also who's going to take the ball late in the game.
Well, Jace Vermillion was the captain on the floor. He was the coach on the floor for his dad, and that's going to be the biggest piece. And Coach Vermillion will find that point guard that he has a lot of guys that are going to be vying for that spot, but those are big shoes to fill. Not only the 15 points a game, but that leadership on the floor to get everybody in what they need to get in. Always the best players I've always seen are the coaches' sons that are point guards. And I know you don't like to admit it, but the point guard is probably the most important person on the floor, especially in the high school level, to get everybody where they need to be. And Jace did a fantastic job for his dad. And so that's going to be the biggest piece that Jason Vermillion is going to have to fill there.
Even though I was a big man in college, I still was a guard in high school. Mm-hmm. You got to have a great point guard. And if you got a point guard with a calm, cool, collective kind of mindset on the floor, it calms everybody else down. It's being I'll mention it one last time, girls basketball coach now, you got to have a point guard to get them in offense. And I think that they have a lot of pieces right here, but can they find the Coach Vermillion listed 7 newcomers. So he's got 11 guys he believes he can compete with. So hopefully someone can step up and take over Jace's spot.
Well, if you look at the Ada Bulldogs, Coach Sauter in his second year of his second stint at Ada, a guy that brings the program to a state Final Four and then goes over to Columbus Grove, his alma mater, brings them to a state Final Four. And now he's back at Ada and hasn't lost a step with the Bulldogs. They went 14-9 last year, 7-3 in the BVC, lose a heartbreaking overtime game on the road at Lima Central Catholic, 45-42. If you just look at this basketball team, I mean, he has some really nice pieces returning. And so if you look at Zach Zimmerman.
Zach Zimmerman, 6'2" senior. Caleb Hickman, a 6' senior, and Gavin Oldfield, a 6'2" senior. So 3 seniors right there, kind of going to have to step up and lead this team. And they might be a little younger than normal, but again, Carson Conley is a 6'2" junior. Colton Dysert, 5'9" junior as well. But some key players lost from last year's team was Levi Green and Brody Erickson and Ethan Lawrence. So losing 3 seniors, obviously coming back with 3 seniors, for this year's team, but got a lot of newcomers that Coach Sauter is really excited about. But they returned the bulk of their scoring, which is a plus. And so if you can return your scores, hopefully they add or increase to what they did last year. They should be a very good team, hoping to be playing their best basketball come tournament time. And as every coach, they know it's a long season. And so it's the patience, it's the process, sticking to the plan. And Coach Sauters is a guy, as you said, he's very he's got the experience. He knows how to get teams to the next level in terms of competitiveness, but hopefully getting them back to, competitive basketball. And again, who knows if they knock off LCC at LCC, what they could have done, because LCC gets to the regionals.
You look at Zimmerman and Conley, I think we're going to be saying their names a lot this year. But Coach Sauter has a lot to look forward in this basketball team. In the first year back, he goes 14-9, like I said, and I think they're going to be vying right up there at the top with Arlington and Liberty Benton for a PCL. And then the other team was Lipsick. Lipsick has really lost a lot of guys. They got beat in the sectional final last year by Ottoville in overtime. They finished the season at 11-12. But again, it's one of those, when are I going to get my kids back from football? And what kind of shape will they be in? But the biggest thing is replacing Jace Breck, who averaged 14 points a game, and Ty Lammers, who averaged 11 a game. So those are 2 big guys that they're going to have to replace and fill around Calvin Miller, who only averaged 5 points a game. He's really going to have to step his game up. But they have a bunch of new guys in there, and Zach Lammers, Marcus Kirkendall, Cash Walther, Mateo Gutierrez, Leo Carrillo, Daniel Garcia, Tyson Beckman, Grady Bryan, and Blake Eagleson. I would love to be on this team right now if I was like a sophomore or junior. Like, there's a lot of playing time up for grabs. And what did I do in the offseason?
Well, you talk about newcomers. There's 9 newcomers that could potentially, have a role. So as Lipsick goes, I mean, they're looking for Calvin to lead them, but the opportunity is there. And as you said, if you're a sophomore or junior, and if you put time in the offseason, you've got a really good chance here. So, it's basketball, and I always say there's always the receipt of debt or regret. Did you do enough in the offseason to give your team an opportunity to get better?
Yeah, but just looking at this conference, I think Liberty Benton and what they return and everything that they have back, they're probably going to be the favorites in their last season in the BVC and actually cut it down. I mean, they're playing 10 league games, and they'll actually get down to like a normal 9-game league schedule. All right, talking about 9-league schedule and 10-team leagues, let's go to the WBL. Last year, Shawnee ran the table under Coach Mark Triplett at 9-0. They make it to a regional and played Sandusky. Elida emerged out of the pack at 8-1 and finished runners-up. Defiance, never count out a Coach Bren Lehman's basketball team. They finished 7-2. Van Wert, they are coming, and they are on a freight train. They're coming because they are young and they are good, and they all got some experience now. They were 5-4. Bath was 4-5. OG was 4-5, and Walpock was 3-6. I say all those teams because I feel like all of those teams have a really good chance in this league to compete for a championship. I would say, and I've said this before on other podcasts, that I think the WBL winner this year does not run the table. I just feel like one loss could even win the conference outright, not even split with somebody, because of the parity between Shawnee, Defiance, Van Wert, Bath, and then, again, you never count out an OG team who they didn't lose much from last year after having a rare down year, and Walpock under Coach Trey. I mean, they're going to defend you. So all of these teams look to be competitive, but let's start with Shawnee.
Well, you got Shawnee who lost in the regional finals to Sandusky, 62-57. They went 24-3, 9-0 in the WBL, averaged 65 points a game, giving up 46. Beckett, they were led by Beckett Berkey. He's a 6'6" senior, Finley commit, averaged a little over 20 points a game, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, first team All-State, WBL District 8 Player of the Year. What a stud. And then right below him, Travick Berkey, 6'7" junior, scored 19 points as a sophomore. I think he averaged 6 or 7, maybe 6 as a freshman. So he took his game to another level as well, getting 19 points a game, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, second team All-State, first team District 8 in WBL. Lost 7 seniors, and I think the 7 seniors is going to be the key. Can Coach Triplett replace or fill those voids? And I think a guy like, Jagger Hutchins, Damala Ojo, guys that just were great role players. I mean, Jagger would be the guy that can knock down 3 straight threes, and then all of a sudden your game plan goes from, okay, now we have to defend him. We got to go one-on-one with the Beckett brothers. I mean, they are the Berkey brothers, excuse me. They are just a difference maker. And then, Bender and Stiles, 2 great, just feisty point guards who could defend. Can they get guys off the JV team to replace them? And I think that's going to be huge. And I know some of the newcomers were J.J. Spiker, Bronson Metzger,
quarterback from the football team,
who had a very good, successful football season. Luke Marshall, Cam Barker, Ashton Wright, Luke McGuire, Sullivan Hessling, and Grayson McDonald. So these guys played JV last year against one of the better teams in Northwest Ohio. So, hopefully they're prepared. And I know Coach Triplett, he's going to get them prepared. And that tip-off weekend will be really interesting to see what type of style or what type of team Shawnee will be.
Well, when you look at Shawnee, I actually had someone that was over at their annual scrimmage between Spencerville and Russia, and they said they haven't lost a beat. it will be interesting, like you said, are these role players going to be able to fulfill roles of seniors that were lost? Because you obviously have a bulk of your scoring back, but it's from only two guys. It's from Beckett and Trevick. So how are you going to, because those two averaged 39 a game, so that means the rest of the team only averaged 25 a game. So how are you going to replace those? Like when you look at Hutchins, like what you were saying, this guy could step out, make a three. He could go post up. He could get you a big rebound. Ojo was a glue guy. He would do all the small things that never showed up in the box score. Bender was the point guard that got him into everything. Styles was the energy off the bench that would hit a couple threes. Some of these new guys, they have the bloodlines. You talk about a Barker. You talk about a McDonald. And then you have J.J. Spiker, who's an ultimate competitor, had a fantastic season as quarterback. Shawnee led his team to a playoff win for the Indians, which if you looked at their team a couple of years ago, you wouldn't even think they would be close to making the playoffs, but they win a playoff game. So Coach Triplett will have these guys. The other thing is these guys have to know, because if you look at both their numbers, Beckett averaged 5 assists, Trevick averaged 4. Get open. They will find you. And they have that experience to know that I don't need to take the shot if I'm being triple teamed. I can make a pass, but they have to be able to trust their teammates like they trust a Hutchins, an Ojo, a Bender, and a Styles to make those baskets. And I'm sure that's what Coach Triplett's harping on, because those two are going to draw so much attention.
Well, they do. And they're obviously they pass the eye test. I mean, they're 6'6". But as you said, their vision is unbelievable. And with almost 5 assists for both of them, you got to get open, because if you can get open, they will find you, because there's going to be so much attention on both of them. So someone's going to be open. So you got to be able to finish.
Well, looking at a team I really think that's going to challenge them is Van Wert. And I know I'm skipping around here a little bit, but Van Wert is the team to me is the team to watch, because this team brought Elida to overtime last year in a sectional final game. They played him close in the regular season. And then we all know Elida went on for a district championship and made it to a regional semi game. They go 10-13 last year. They go 4-5 in the WBL. And what I look at is they did this with all freshmen and sophomores last year. Now they're sophomores and juniors. I really like Coach Best's team. I know that they play Shawnee early on, but they do have them at home, because we called the game over at Shawnee last year, and that was a game where Shawnee was winning by 20 at the end of the third quarter. Van Wert hits 9 threes in the fourth quarter and actually makes it a game towards the end. But that game is early on, I would suspect. No, it's late. It's a late game. The schedule rotated. So it's towards the end of the season, February 13th. But that game, I don't think it's the all game, because, again, I think a team that's going to win this conference is going to have one loss. But Coach Best really has to be chomping at the bit with the quarterback from the football team. Had a fantastic season as a sophomore. But as a freshman in basketball, he was honorable mention All Ohio Division IV, Zach Crummy. What is he now, about 6'5", 6'6"?
6'5", every bit, 6'5", if not 6'6".
He averaged 12.8 points a game last year, 8 rebounds, shot 56% from the floor. He's a second-team All-WBL player, second-team All-District player. So he's really had a nice season last year. But Keaton Welsh is the point guard from the team. He's been around the program now. He's going to be a junior.
Yeah.
And so this is his third year as a starter on the basketball team. He had 11 points a game last year. He had 74 assists. He's a third-team All-WBL player. They got Griffin McCracken at 8.7 a game, a good three-point shooter, made 48 threes. He was an honorable mention player all last year. Then you talk about the receiver from the basketball team. His brother Jacoby used to play for Van Wert. Xavier Kelly averaged 7.3 as a freshman last year. And then they got Cohen Bragg, Caden Collins. All these guys contributed last year. And then another guy that's coming in, and a lot of people may not have heard of him, is Caven Welsh. And that's the older brother to Keaton Welsh. And so he'll play a role, because he has to fill the shoes of Nate Gearhart, who they lost last year. Didn't see significant amount of time, but he might be playing that same role. Caven Welsh, he'll know his role, what to go in and do to help make this team successful.
Well, and Coach Best is one of the best coaches that I've ever coached against. I mean, the guy is 2-time state champion. he just knows how to get these guys prepared. And if Zach Crummy takes his game as a freshman, averaging almost 13 points a game as a freshman, where it could be as a sophomore and as a junior, it's really the sky's the limit for him. And I know they've kind of upped their schedule a little bit. They didn't pick up LCC this year because they dropped it, and they're going up to Defiance to play Springfield. And I think Coach Best wants to kind of ramp their schedule up a little bit, because as they get going, they got to be challenged. And a lot of times the 22 games are going to challenge you, and Coach Best wants those challenges every night. And for Van Wert averaging 51 points a game, they could easily look at 60 this year, but also holding their teams where they gave up 49 last year. They got to do a better job of defending, and it might give teams up to 44, 45.
Well, if they're not ready to play a home game, then they got problems, because that light show, guys, if you have not seen the light show for introductions at Van Wert, it was a donor that gave the money for this. It is top notch.
It's NBA.
NBA, yes. Other than not having flames coming out of the baskets. Yeah. I mean, it has everything. Fantastic. Again, I'm looking for a fantastic season out of the Cougars this year. But again, they're still sophomores and juniors. They still have room to improve, not throughout the year, but into next year as well. So the Cougars are back.
They got their work cut out for them the opening weekend, where they open up with Crestview, and then at Delphus St. John. So they're going to become road warriors right away, because their schedule. We talked about playing the best. I mean, you're going to play Crestview, which will be a local team for them, and then they have to go across the county and play Delphus St. John. So 2 really good teams.
Well, not only is Coach Best in his second year at his second stint, we have another coach that is in his second stint, not in his second stint, in his sophomore year, but in his third stint as a coach at 3 different locations, and that's Coach Dre White at Bath. Bath lost to Elida for the 3rd time during the season in the district semifinal, 38-52 over at Finley High School. They finished the season at 14-10. Bath has really come a long way in the last 3 or 4 years, and a lot of that is attributed to what Coach Dre White did last year. They finished 4-5 in the WBL. But the reason why I skipped to this team is I think you can put them in the mix with a Shawnee and a Van Wert this year, because of the guys that are returning. And the big guy is 6'5" senior. He was a player of the week for us last year. Logan Markley, he averaged 16.8 a game, 5 rebounds. He was a first-team All-WBL player, second-team All-District 8, and he was also a third-teamer in Division 4 in Northwest Ohio. He also has his senior guard back, Zach Welch, who averaged only 2 points a game. But again, that leadership on the floor. Dagan Hawkins, who's a 5'10 senior, Daniel Cole. So he has a lot of guys back. They obviously have to replace Jackson Foster, who was kind of up and down last year, had some really good games, and then some games where he just was kind of non-existent, but was a big piece to their success last year. And I know Coach Dre White is really chomping at the bit to fill that position with some newcomers like Josiah Clark, Drew Pester. Peaster, sorry. Is it Pester or Peaster? Peaster. Okay, some people say Pester, Peaster. He transferred over from LCC for his senior year. He was originally a Bath Wildcat 2 years ago and before that. So, and then you got Levi Grime trying to get in there to get some time. But I really like what Dre White does as a basketball coach and how he's formed this program, the way he wants it. And I really look for this team a lot of promising things this year.
Well, Logan Markley's a kid. I remember last year, I would have had Jackson Foster as their best player. Yeah. And the more and more I watched the Bath Wildcats, Logan Markley was their guy. And he was a stud last year. And you talk about almost 17 points a game, close to 5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, first team, WBL. He was a kid that carried them a lot of times. And then, Jackson Foster was a guy that, when he was on, they were really, it was a hard combo to stop. And, losing Jackson's, ability to score will be missed. But knowing Zach Welch, quarterback from the football team, they had a great football season as well.
They won a playoff game as well.
And so, they got a lot of experience, last year as juniors and sophomores. And now they're seniors, and being senior-led and having that experience on the football team, with the success that they had, it's just going to breed everything that the Bath community wants, and that starts with the head coaches. You look at Dre White, the kid just knows how to win. He knows how to, put things out there and make them successful. And knowing Dre, he's going to get these guys right.
Yeah, and he holds them accountable.
100%.
What they do. And I've seen some of the things that he does with that program, and Bath Wildcats are very lucky to have him as a coach. Another guy in his sophomore season last year, what he only did in his first year, he brought the Bulldogs to a regional, won their first district championship in a long time. It was probably close to 5 or 6 years, 7 years since the last time Eli had won a district championship. They ran into a hot Gates Mills Hawkins team that really blew past them in the second half. They lost 49-73, but Coach Howard brought his basketball team 18-8 and 8-1 in the WBL. I like to see the numbers there, 53.5 a game, only giving up 47 a game. But he's going to have to, again, fulfill some roles that are lost. And the first one is Parker Krim. Parker Krim was a big inside guy, not a big point scorer, could rebound, change a lot of shots, 6'4" guy that's enrolling early to the University of Illinois to play football. And then he loses his two dynamic guards, and Zori Island, who is playing community college down in South Carolina, and then Amari Walsh, who transferred up to Detroit. So I actually had an opportunity to go watch this team scrimmage yesterday against Bellefontaine, and this team is not going to be bad. Like, I didn't have high expectations going in, but I was really impressed with how Marcus Hill has kind of changed his game to being the off guard. He was the 3 guard last year, and he's going to have to step up and be a point guard this year with the loss of Amari Walsh and Zori Island. So he really is going to have to step his game up, but I was impressed with it. But a guy I was really impressed with, Jonathan Payne. He only averaged 3 points a game last year. He's a senior this year, but he did an excellent job of getting to the basket and drawing defense. He still has to make the good decisions when he gets into the paint, and the good decision is kicking it out to Brody Altenball. Dude doesn't miss. The dude is fire, man. Like, every time he catches it, you've had those players. Every time you catch it, it's going in. And if it doesn't, you're kind of surprised. And so I really like what Coach Howard's done with this team, because he has 4 guys back that had a regional experience. But Marcus Hill's really the only one that actually played a big role in that. But Brody Altenball played a lot in the regional. Noah Jospel got some minutes. And so this team, I think, is going to surprise some teams. I don't think they're going to probably be as successful record-wise as they were last year, but I think that Coach Howard's going to have a lot of fun coaching this team because he's going to be able to teach a lot.
Well, I remember Coach Howard last year starting out of the gate 1-5. 1-4. The first 5 games,
it's a gauntlet.
And I know he was, beating his head on the table at times, and if you as a coach know it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And I think he's got to look at what they did last year, winning 18 games, going 18-8. At one point 1-4. So that's a tough mindset for a coach who's new. And then all of a sudden at the end of the season, it's not where you start, it's where you finish, and you get to the regionals. And as a former coach of the Bulldogs, you had to be so proud knowing, like, hey, I helped develop some of those guys, and that head coach now was my assistant. So it's one of those kind of like proud dad moments that you have. And I know when I stepped down from LCC, seeing Sean Powell taking the T-Birds to the state going, okay, I helped develop a lot of those kids, but knowing that those kids are being led by Coach Powell or Coach Howard, you got to be so proud of being part of that community.
Yeah, and if you look at some of the newcomers, they have a lot of height at the young age. So, I think that Coach Howard has a lot to look for, not only this year, but years coming. Because you look at Peyton Hinkle, he's a 6'2" guard. He's only a sophomore. Gavin Tickle's a 6'4" sophomore.
Jonas Snyder,
6'4". Sorry, 6'4". I should know him. And then he has some other guys in the mix, like Brady Bruin, who's been a JV player for 3 years, but just works his tail off for Coach Howard. And Coach Howard has him penciled in right now as a 6, 7, or 8 guy that can come in as a senior.
6, 7.
There we go, 6, 7. And just get him some minutes that he needs. So I really think the Bulldogs are going to surprise some people this year because they see Parker Krim gone. They see Amari Walsh gone. They see Zori Island gone. But I think that Coach Howard's doing the right things with this team. And he's changed up a lot of things that he was doing last year. He had a lot of athleticism and quickness at the guard level. They still have that, but they don't have the depth that they had last year. So I'm anxious to see them in the tip-off. We're going to probably have a tip-off show, maybe. I don't know. Depends how long my surgery it takes me to recover from. But I really think all 4 games on both nights are going to be really competitive, really good games.
Definitely. Let's turn our attention to Defiance. They're in Division III, lost in the district finals to Shawnee, 43-58. They went 19-6, 7-2 in the WBL, and averaged 53 points a game while giving up 44. But letter returning, this year for Coach Lehman, Jordan Wright, he's a 5'11 senior guard, averaging 6.5 a game. But Josiah Schlater, he is a 5'11 junior guard, but averaging almost 13.5 points a game. So having a big returner like him coming back, Will Horvath, he's a 6-foot senior, 3 points a game. But, for the Bulldogs, you play in the best facility in the area. Defiance High School has the best gym, in my opinion. I love Elida.
Yeah.
Okay, the field house is great. But the Defiance High School gym there is beautiful. And so Coach Lehman's going to have a product that he's going to put on a floor. And he's a very attention detailed, oriented guy. And he's going to get his guys playing. And he's got some promising newcomers that are coming. Not a lot of height. He does have a guy, Noah Schenk, who's 6'7". He's 215 junior. So it sounds like he's a product that's in the making. Being 6'7" and having a body like that, I'm sure Coach Lehman's going to find a way to get him on the floor.
Well, you talk about players lost, though, and I think the biggest thing is Khalil Ligon, and you look at Dre Singleton. I feel like those 2 players, if you remember right, they had the opportunity to knock Shawnee off at home last year, up by like 5 or 6 with less than 30 seconds to go.
Yeah.
And Shawnee makes that miraculous comeback to go to overtime. And if they win that game, it's a 3-way tie for first place between Elida, Defiance, and them. But I like what he has returning here. I love what Coach Lehman does with his teams, a lot like his dad, Kirk Lehman, who was very successful coach at Defiance. Real detail-oriented, always defends you well. And so Bryn brings back a lot, like you just said. I look for this team to be up in the mix with Bath, with Van Wert, and with Shawnee. I really think that, again, I'm going back to this. One loss is probably going to win this league. Just because it is so competitive, those top 5 or 6 teams are really, really strong. So speaking of coaches of a dad that was a coach, let's go to the last WBL team.
All right, we're looking at Walpock. Coach Elkert here loses in the district semis to Defiance, team we just talked about. They went 12-11 last year, 3-6 in the WBL. But last year's recap, they sectional champs, 5th consecutive winning season, extremely young group last year that finished the last 10 games 7-3. So a lot of things to build on. I think a lot of times, in these cases, it's your personnel. Are they healthy? And I felt like Caleb Moyer was a guy who was a difference maker last year, but was never really truly healthy. Like they were always hit with like some sort of injury bug. Mm-hmm. And if you're Coach Elkert, that's so important. Getting guys who play football, that do play basketball, can I get them in a healthy manner? And I think that's really hard, because football is such a violent and brutal sport. But, the way that Caleb Moyer plays the football game, I mean, he's always going to be banged up. And so if he can get Caleb Moyer at his strength this year, because he was 13 WBL last year, he was a 3-time letter winner. So here he is. He's got 3 varsity letters in basketball. He averages close to 10 points a game, 4.5 rebounds. I mean, he's kind of the Mr. Do-It-All. But you also got to look at Ryan Richardson. He's a 6'2", second-team WBL kid, 2-time letter winner, 12 points a game, 4.5 rebounds, shoots 40% from the three-point line. Some great returners. And then you got juniors, Blake Rogers, 6 foot, honorable mention, WBL, almost 8 points a game. Junior Caleb Adams, 6'5", two-time letter winner, 7 points a game. Junior Elliott Block, 6'5", so he's got height. So can the Redskins, can they put it all together? And I say that it's if they're healthy.
The similarities between Coach Lehman and Coach Elker are ridiculous. They are so detail-oriented. They will always defend you. They execute on the offensive end. And so those two teams, you can always give a chance going in. They may not have the best player in the league. They may not even have the top 5 best players in the league. But when you have a coach that pays attention to detail like they do, that always gives them a chance to win. And so for Walpock, they go 3-6 last year. They lose to Defiance in the district, the district semi game. No, did they? Yeah, because Defiance played Shawnee in the district final. We called those games. But they go 12-11. And again, if I look at that basketball team, I don't see this outstanding top 5 player in the WBL, but they are well coached. They do what they're told. They're fundamental, and they know how to win. And it transfers over from the football field. And they run the table again in the WBL and football. And unfortunately, it was Trotwood Madison a few years ago, and now it's Toledo Central Catholic that they're running into. But they just know how to win. So when you have a coach that can coach winners, that always gives you a chance to be in the mix for a WBL championship.
Well, it'll be interesting this winter. And again, stay tuned to the Varsity Locker Room podcast. Again, we've just covered the WBL, the MAC, and the BVC. So looking forward to the rest of the winter, and see you guys soon.